Have you ever felt like you're too much for the world around you? Like your thoughts are too deep, your questions too many, and your silence too loud? You're not alone. What if I told you the loneliness you feel isn't your fault? That maybe the problem isn't you, but the world you're trying to fit into. Society, after all, isn't made for people like you. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, believed that true intelligence comes with a price that often isolates you from others. So, what if this loneliness isn't a curse, but proof of your brilliance? Let's dive deeper into this idea and explore why the truly intelligent are often misunderstood. You've probably heard it before. You're too quiet. You're too intense. You're too much. And when you speak, the room goes silent. Not because you're wrong, but because you're different. You notice things others don't. You question what others blindly accept. Slowly, you begin to feel the distance between you and everyone else growing. While they laugh at things that bore you, obsess over trivial drama, and get caught up in surface-level conversations, you're left wondering why you're stuck thinking about life, meaning, and death. You try to blend in. You smile when you're supposed to. You nod along, pretending to care. But deep down, you feel like a stranger among your own kind. And eventually, a question creeps in. Is something wrong with me? But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if society, as it is, just isn't built for people like you? Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher known for his brutally honest views on the human condition, argued that true, raw intelligence comes with a heavy burden. It isolates. The more you think deeply, the more alienated you become. Why? Because, according to Schopenhauer, most people don't actually want the truth. They want comfort. And intelligent people, those who see things clearly, who dig beneath the surface, threaten that comfort. In this video, we're going to explore Schopenhauer's uncomfortable truth, why society rejects the truly intelligent, and how your loneliness might just be the highest proof of your mind. It all starts early. You're sitting in a classroom, surrounded by kids your age, and yet you feel off. Not superior, just disconnected. While everyone else is laughing without thinking, you're lost in thought, pondering questions like, why do people say things they don't mean? Why does small talk feel like noise? Why does it feel like I'm always watching life unfold rather than actually living it? This is the first taste of the silent curse that comes with intelligence. It's not the academic kind, the kind that earns grades or awards. It's the kind of intelligence that asks too many questions, feels too deeply, and notices things others overlook. It's the kind that sees contradictions, observes subtle hypocrisy, and feels the pressure to just go along with the flow, even though it's impossible to do so. As you grow older, this disconnect only becomes more evident. You begin holding back in conversations. You've learned that being honest makes people uncomfortable. Asking too many whys kills the vibe. So you start to nod, smile, and pretend. You put on a mask because being understood feels impossible. And then, something strange happens. People start to mistake you for being arrogant, when in reality, you're just exhausted from trying to explain yourself. You're not cold or distant. You've simply learned that depth scares people. So, you keep your insights locked away, your questions censored, and your pain hidden. Here's the paradox. Society claims to admire intelligence. It tells us it values critical thinking, intellect, and brilliance. Yet when intelligence presents itself in its rawest form, society emotionally rejects it. We love genius in theory, but in real life, the genuinely intelligent are isolated. Why? Because real intelligence doesn't just solve problems. It challenges norms. It questions the things others take for granted. It sees through the illusions Everyone else accepts without question, and that makes people uncomfortable. You become too complex for surface-level connections, too analytical to enjoy the simple joys without dissecting them, too aware to ever truly relax, and the emotional toll, it's invisible, but it's crushing. You sit in rooms full of people, but you feel completely alone. You long for a connection that reaches beyond the shallow. You yearn for someone who doesn't just hear you, but truly gets you. But that person never seems to come. So you begin to wonder, is there something wrong with me? That's the unspoken tragedy. The world doesn't teach intelligent people how to cope with this kind of loneliness. But what if this loneliness isn't a flaw? What if it's simply a byproduct of a mind that's too sharp, too aware, and too deep for the world around it? It's a familiar feeling. Society teaches you how to succeed, how to perform, but it never quite prepares you for how to exist when your mind is wired differently. So, you adapt. You become a chameleon, blending in, dumbing down, learning when to remain silent, not because you want to, but because you have to. Every time you spoke your truth, you paid the price. And slowly, you learned that keeping your thoughts to yourself was the only way to survive. But deep inside, the weight builds. A quiet sadness, a hunger for meaning, and a constant question. Am I the only one who feels this way? You are not alone. In fact, what you feel, the silent suffering, the sense of isolation, is not proof of weakness. It's a signal that your mind is rare, trying to survive in a world that often feels shallow. And the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer understood this feeling centuries ago. He didn't just recognize your pain, he predicted it. There's a hidden rule that governs much of human society, one that you've unknowingly internalized. Don't think too much, don't question the script, don't step out of line, just follow the crowd, say what's safe, agree with the loudest voice in the room. This, Schopenhauer argued, is what he meant by the herd mentality. The herd, people who surrender their independent thoughts, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've been conditioned to fear independent thinking. Schopenhauer saw this as a kind of societal protection against the discomfort that true intelligence brings. And that's why truly intelligent people are often feared. Not because they're smarter, but because they refuse to worship the herd. When someone starts asking why, when someone notices contradictions, lies, and blind traditions, the group gets nervous. It's not a logical response. It's psychological. Every classroom, every office, every community carries with it a subtle pressure, conform, or be cast out. And intelligent people, by their very nature, resist this pressure. Not out of rebellion, but because of an innate curiosity and drive for truth. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Thinking differently is not admired. It's treated as a threat. Intelligence doesn't just question facts, it questions comfort. It disrupts illusions. It shines a light on everything people are trying to ignore, and that makes people uneasy. Think about it. When you walk into a room and say something that exposes the group's hypocrisy, when you suggest an idea that hasn't been pre-approved by the masses, when you challenge the system rather than playing along, what happens? You don't get applause. You get labeled weird, too intense, not a team player. Take the modern workplace, for instance. We claim we want innovation. We praise creativity and out-of-the-box thinking in theory. But in reality, those who raise uncomfortable truths in meetings are often sidelined. Employees who question inefficient systems are told to stop overthinking. Those who refuse to engage in workplace gossip or fake positivity are labeled antisocial. It's the same story in schools. Students who follow the rules blindly are rewarded, while those who ask too many questions are labeled as disruptive, not because they're wrong, but because they challenge authority. The uncomfortable truth is that society, while claiming to value intellect, often fears the disruption that comes with truly deep thought. And for those who think differently, it can feel like the system isn't designed for you to thrive. Even online platforms, where free thought is supposed to thrive, punish complexity. In the world of algorithms, simplicity is rewarded. Repetition, emotional manipulation, and catchy sound bites are what grab attention, not nuance, not depth, and certainly not intelligence. So what happens to the truly intelligent in such a system? They learn to hide, to shrink, to wear a mask just to survive. And in the end, society gets exactly what it wants: silent brilliance. Genius locked behind social anxiety, potential buried under years of self-doubt. Wisdom that's never shared because it's never welcomed. It's the ultimate irony. The world says it wants intelligence, but only on its terms. Only the kind that plays nice. Only the kind that doesn't make people uncomfortable. Only the kind that fits neatly inside a tidy little box. But real intelligence is anything but. Tidy, it's messy. It doesn't fit into catchy slogans. It doesn't care about what's trending or popular. It doesn't flatter egos. It confronts them. And that's why society often pushes it away. To be truly intelligent is to be misunderstood, to be feared, and to feel alone in a room full of people who are nodding to things you know are false. It's not just rejection, it's social exile. Because when you can see through the game, you stop playing it. And when you stop playing it, you stop belonging. That's the cost of nonconformity. And for those who refuse to betray their own minds, it's a price they silently pay every single day. But Schopenhauer, the philosopher who deeply understood this, believed this suffering wasn't meaningless. In fact, he believed it had purpose. He saw intelligence not as a privilege, but as a burden, one that few are strong enough to carry. And for those who do carry it, they walk a lonelier path, but also a truer one. Arthur Schopenhauer was not your typical philosopher. He didn't sugarcoat reality or promise happiness. Instead, he argued that life, at its core, is suffering, and that the more conscious you are, the more acutely you feel that suffering. To many, this might sound bleak, even depressing. But for those who have lived through the quiet despair of thinking too much and feeling too deeply, Schopenhauer's view feels brutally honest. It's almost as if someone finally spoke the truth out loud, the truth that so many keep buried. Born in 1788 in Germany, Schopenhauer was raised in a wealthy but emotionally cold household. His father was a strict, rational merchant, and his mother was a literary socialite who, later on, disapproved of his pessimistic worldview. From a young age, Schopenhauer felt like an outsider. His ability to observe life with such depth made him feel more like a witness to the world than an active participant in it. And that's exactly how his philosophy evolved. His most famous idea revolves around this simple truth: a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. According to Schopenhauer, intelligence leads to isolation, not by choice, but as a consequence. The deeper you understand life, the more alienated you become from those who live on its surface. It's a harsh reality, but one that Schopenhauer saw clearly. At the heart of his worldview lies the concept of the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all living beings. This will is not logical. It doesn't care about truth or meaning. It simply wants, endlessly, mindlessly, and painfully. In Schopenhauer's view, most people are ruled by this will. They chase after pleasure, power, and validation, not because they've thought it through, but because they are trapped in a cycle of desire that they can't even see. For Schopenhauer, most of society was trapped in this relentless pursuit. People couldn't stop wanting, couldn't stop chasing, and in doing so, they never truly lived. And this, he believed, is why true intelligence and awareness are so isolating. Because once you see through the endless cycle of desire, you can no longer participate in it. The truly intelligent, the thinkers, the observers, eventually recognize the trap that society has set for them. They step outside of it, they detach, and that's where the suffering begins. Because once you see the world for what it really is, a dance of illusions powered by unconscious craving, you can never unsee it. You no longer laugh at the same jokes. Small talk, which once felt like a harmless way to connect, now feels hollow. You start to feel like a ghost drifting through a party that never ends, watching the world around you, but never truly participating. You wonder why no one else notices the emptiness, why they continue to get caught up in things that, for you, have lost all significance. Schopenhauer captured this feeling perfectly when he said, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." In other words, ignorance is not just bliss, it's belonging. When you start asking deeper questions about meaning, mortality, and morality, you begin to lose your place in the tribe, not because people hate you, but because they simply don't understand you. Schopenhauer didn't hate society. Rather, he believed that society and solitude serve two different purposes. Society keeps you entertained, distracted. Solitude makes you real. And the truly intelligent, the ones who see through the illusions of everyday life, eventually crave what society can't offer: silence, clarity, and authenticity. This is why Schopenhauer didn't view solitude as loneliness, but as liberation. He famously wrote, "Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude." For Schopenhauer, intelligence wasn't glamorous. It was a curse that stripped away comfort and forced you into existential exile. But he didn't advocate despair. Instead, he believed there was a higher way to live, a way to transform suffering into insight, alienation into wisdom, through contemplation, art, and philosophy. He was one of the few philosophers bold enough to say that the pain you feel from thinking too much is real. The disconnection you experience when others don't understand your thoughts, it's valid. And that sense that something is wrong with the world, you're not imagining it. This is why Schopenhauer's work resonates with so many people who feel out of place. Those who sit in classrooms, meetings, family dinners, surrounded by words but starving for meaning. Schopenhauer understood that suffering was the price of clarity. And while the world often mocks those who see too much, he whispered from the pages of his books, "You are not broken, you are just awake." His philosophy wasn't meant to fix life, but to help us endure it without lying to ourselves. To face the darkness not with fear, but with dignity. Because in the end, intelligence may isolate you from others, but it also connects you with truth, with art, with beauty, and with your own soul. Schopenhauer believed that this was a higher kind of connection, one that no crowd can offer and no rejection can ever take away. Loneliness is often seen as a failure of social life, but what if it's actually the price of deeper thinking? Modern psychology is beginning to confirm what philosophers like Schopenhauer sensed centuries ago, that high intelligence often comes with high isolation. Let's look at the science. A 2016 study published in the British Journal of Psychology found something fascinating. The more intelligent a person is, the less satisfaction they report from frequent socializing. For most people, being around friends boosts happiness. But for those with higher intelligence, the opposite is often true. For highly intelligent individuals, too much social interaction can actually lead to frustration overstimulation, and a sense of emptiness. But why is this? It's because the conversations around them often feel shallow. Their minds crave depth, nuance, and ideas, not gossip, repetition, or emotional noise. They may care deeply about people, but they struggle with the type of connection that society offers. This creates a kind of cognitive loneliness. It's not just about being alone. It's about being surrounded by people who don't think like you. It's about feeling more isolated in a crowd than if you were physically alone. And this is where the emotional paradox begins. On one hand, highly intelligent people are introspective. They analyze, reflect, overthink. They live in their heads, sculpting entire universes of thought that others may never even glimpse. But on the other hand, they are human. They still crave connection, intimacy, and resonance. They want someone who doesn't just nod and smile, but who gets it. Someone who hears the unsaid and understands the invisible. And that's the psychological trap. The smarter you are, the harder it is to find someone who truly understands your loneliness. This isn't arrogance, it's neuroscience. Psychologist Dr. Thomas Suddenoff, an expert in cognitive evolution, explains that our brains evolved in small tribal groups, typically ranging from 100 to 150 people. Our intelligence was shaped by the need to survive and fit into these tight social circles. But today's highly intelligent individuals live in a radically different environment. They process information faster, think in abstractions, and challenge norms. They no longer fit the emotional blueprint of tribal belonging, and as a result, their minds become evolutionary misfits. The world simply hasn't caught up to their wiring, and it hurts, because deep intelligence often brings emotional dysregulation. It's not that something is wrong, it's that there's just too much going on inside. Imagine thinking 10 thoughts at once while others are only having one. Imagine noticing every micro-expression in a conversation, or replaying a single word someone said for hours, trying to decipher its meaning. This heightened sensitivity is not a superpower, it's a burden. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and emotional burnout. Not because the world is inherently hostile, but because it's not built to handle people who feel this much and think. This deeply taught, one Harvard study even suggested that highly intelligent children often experience greater feelings of alienation and existential worry. From a young age, they realize they are different. And instead of being celebrated for their brilliance, this difference is often punished. They're told things like, "You think too much, why can't you just be normal? Stop asking so many questions." So they internalize these messages. They start to wonder, maybe something's wrong with me. This creates an internal conflict, a push and pull between self-expression and self-protection. They want to open up, but they've been shut down too many times. They want to connect, but they've learned that it's often safer to withdraw. So they build emotional walls, hoping that someone will notice the silence behind them. But most people never do. Even in romantic relationships, this pattern plays out. Highly intelligent individuals often struggle to feel truly seen, not just admired but understood. They may come off as distant or cold, but in truth, highly intelligent. Individuals are often protecting a depth that has been mishandled too many times. It's not that they don't want love or connection. It's just that they've learned that most people love the idea of intelligence, not the complex emotional reality that comes with it. Psychologist Kazimierz Drowski coined a term for this phenomenon: overexcitability. Overexcitability refers to a heightened sensitivity in 5 key areas: intellectual, emotional, imaginative, sensory, and psychomotor. In simple terms, smart people feel more, think more, and suffer more. While this intensity fuels their creativity and insight, it also deepens the divide between them and the world around them. It's not just a gift or a blessing, it's a double-edged, sword. But here's the hidden truth. Loneliness doesn't always mean something is missing. Sometimes it means something is unmatched. A mind that sees through illusions. A heart that refuses to settle for shallow conversations. A soul that yearns for meaning over comfort. Someone with these qualities will always feel a little apart, not because they have failed socially, but because they are wired for something deeper, something rarer. So if you've ever felt this type of loneliness, the absence of resonance, not just the absence of people, it might not be a curse. It could be a quiet signal that you are among the few who are not just alive, but truly awake. The world may not always see it that way, but your sensitivity to the world's surface-level distractions is what makes you different. You might think that intelligence would naturally attract admiration, and at first, it often does. But behind admiration can lurk something darker: envy. Envy, in its subtlety, has a strange way of turning reverence into rejection. Most people won't admit this, not even to themselves. But in everyday life, intelligent individuals often face quiet resentment, sometimes subtle and sometimes overt. It's not because they are unkind, it's because their very presence exposes something painful in others: insecurity. When you walk into a room and speak with clarity, depth, or confidence, some people won't hear your words. They'll hear their own inadequacy. They'll feel outshined, small, unseen. And that sting they feel? It's their ego trying to protect itself. This is where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes into play. Named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, this effect describes how people with lower ability tend to overestimate their own competence because they don't know what they don't know. Now, imagine adding someone truly intelligent into that environment. Suddenly, the illusion of competence shatters. They are confronted with their own limitations, and instead of facing them, many people lash out. They might call the intelligent person arrogant, cold, weird, perhaps even thinks they are better than everyone. But the irony? The intelligent person never said any of these things. It's simply that the ego heard them on its own, because intelligence doesn't just challenge ideas, it challenges identities. And that's where things get uncomfortable. In tribal psychology, this creates a social threat. Humans evolved in groups where acceptance meant survival. Standing out, thinking differently, questioning norms meant risking exile. So when someone intelligent walks into a room and disrupts the group's consensus, it triggers something deep within us, something primal. This person becomes a threat. The group feels as though they might be torn apart or cast out by the presence of someone who challenges their collective beliefs. This pattern of rejection and retaliation has repeated throughout history. Socrates, perhaps the most famous philosopher of all time, was executed for corrupting the youth. But what he truly did was expose the shallow thinking of the powerful. Galileo, for suggesting that the earth revolves around the sun, was placed under house arrest, not because science was offended, but because the authority of the church was. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest inventors in history, died broke and alone. Alan Turing, whose work helped end World War II, was chemically castrated for being gay and later took his own life. These were not just stories of misunderstanding, they were stories of egoic retaliation. Because when someone introduces a new truth, they also expose the lies that people have built their identities upon. And most people would rather reject the truth-bearer than face the uncomfortable task of reconstructing themselves. This is not just a pattern of the past. Even today, innovators, deep thinkers, and truth speakers often find themselves shadow banned, not just on digital platforms, but in real life. In offices, they are ignored. In classrooms, they are labeled disruptive. In relationships, they are told they are too much. Why? Because intelligence without conformity threatens the social order. It disturbs comfort. It raises standards. It makes mediocrity visible. And that's unforgivable in a world addicted to comfort and illusion. So, envy whispers in silence, and the ego pulls the trigger. But here's the paradox. People want intelligence, as long as it doesn't make them question themselves. They'll admire a genius on YouTube, quote a philosopher on Instagram, but sit them across from someone who sees too clearly, feels too deeply, and speaks too honestly, and suddenly it's war. So if you've ever been rejected, not for your flaws, but for your clarity, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because your presence awakened something others were not ready to face. And in a world driven by ego, that's more dangerous than evil. So what do you do when the very thing that makes you special also makes you feel alone? When your mind reaches depths that most people never touch, but no one around you seems to care or understand? Arthur Schopenhauer did not sugarcoat this paradox. He didn't try to fix it with toxic positivity or false reassurances. He gave a brutal, almost cruel yet profoundly liberating answer: solitude. Schopenhauer argued that intellectual superiority is often marked by a propensity for solitude, not as a punishment, but as liberation. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: the crowd rarely understands the individual. The more profound your thoughts, the more likely they will echo in silence. But to Schopenhauer, that silence was not emptiness. It was clarity. In a world that fears being alone, solitude is often seen as a weakness. People chase distractions, constant connection, and endless noise. They measure their worth by likes, messages, and attention. But Schopenhauer flipped the script. He said, "The one who can be alone and still feel whole, that is the strongest kind of person." Solitude, he believed, is not loneliness. Loneliness is craving connection and not finding it. Solitude is choosing peace over shallow company. It's not the absence of people, it's the presence of yourself. Schopenhauer believed that deep thinkers naturally retreat, not because they hate people, but because they are exhausted by shallowness. Ordinary people, he implied, are like a clock, always ticking the same thoughts and repeating the same ideas. But the noble intellect is like a compass, constantly pointing toward depth, truth, and meaning. You can't follow that compass in a noisy room. So what does solitude offer that society never can? Freedom. Not just physical freedom, but mental and emotional independence. The freedom to think without interruption, to feel without judgment, to create without compromise. It is in solitude that great ideas are born: art, philosophy, science, vision. None of these are products of crowds. They are forged in stillness. Schopenhauer spent most of his life in quiet reflection. He wasn't popular in his time. He wasn't praised during his life, but he understood something timeless. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is truly free. But here's the real power. When you no longer seek validation, you become untouchable. Rejection loses its sting. You stop molding yourself to fit into places you don't belong. You stop shrinking your thoughts to make others comfortable. And suddenly, that solitude becomes a sanctuary. It becomes a forge for strength, a mirror for truth. This is the brutal brilliance of Schopenhauer's solution. Don't beg society to accept your depth. Let it reject you. Let it misunderstand you. Because that rejection is proof of your difference, not your failure. The world does not ignore deep thinkers because they are wrong. It ignores them because they threaten what's easy and familiar. So if you are misunderstood, if you are left out, if you are labeled too intense, too analytical, or too different, Schopenhauer would say, good. It means you're no longer a prisoner of the herd. But solitude is not just an escape. It's a reclamation. It's a reclamation of your mind, your time, and your energy. It allows you to stop performing and start being. Not who the world wants, but who you truly are. And slowly, as you settle into that quiet, you begin to see what others can't. You notice beauty in silence, patterns in chaos, and depth in pain. You stop trying to belong and start becoming. This is what Schopenhauer called the noble intellect. Not noble by birth, but by inner richness. And it's not for everyone. Most will never choose it because solitude requires you to face yourself, and that is terrifying. But if you are brave enough to walk that path, to sit in silence, to feel the weight of your thoughts, and to resist the urge to dilute yourself just to fit in, then solitude becomes power. Not because it makes you special, but because it makes you real. So don't fear the loneliness that intelligence can bring. Let it shape you. Let it deepen you. Let it set you free. If you have ever felt out of place, like your thoughts are too heavy, your questions too deep, or your emotions too intense for the world around you, know this: you are not broken. You are not too much. You are just more aware. And that awareness, that depth, comes with a cost. Loneliness, misunderstanding, rejection. But here's the truth. No one tells you that pain is not a flaw. It's a sign that you see what others don't, that you feel what others suppress, that you think in ways that challenge the comfort of the crowd. The very things that make you different are often the same things that make others uncomfortable. So they pull away. Not because you are wrong, but because you remind them of what they refuse to face in themselves. This is the secret Schopenhauer understood. You don't need to change who you are. You need to understand who you are. The journey of an intelligent soul is never linear. It moves from confusion. Why don't I fit in? To clarity. Maybe I was never meant to inner power. I don't need to. And somewhere along that path, loneliness transforms. It stops being a wound and becomes a mirror that reflects your truth, your vision, and your potential. Schopenhauer once wrote, "Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude, not because they are arrogant, but because they need the silence to see clearly. Because from that height, you are no longer lost in the noise. You are above it. So, if society rejects you, let it. That rejection is not a failure. It's confirmation that you think deeply, that you feel honestly, and that you are no longer willing to trade authenticity for approval. Let that be your proof. You're not lost. You're just ahead of your time. And in time, others may catch up, or they may not. But you will already be free. If you've made it this far, you are not just watching a video. You are searching for meaning, for truth, for something real. And I want you to know, that already sets you apart. Maybe you've always felt different, like you think too much, feel too deeply, or care about things others ignore. Maybe the world has made you question whether that's a flaw. It's not. It's clarity. Schopenhauer believed that the loneliest paths often belong to the clearest minds. And while that clarity may isolate you, it also frees you. Here at Siphos, this is the space for those who think deeply, question everything, and never settle for surface-level answers. You are not alone in how you think or feel. This channel exists for you. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, philosophy, and the human mind. Share this video with someone who might need it. And if you've ever felt this kind of isolation, tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. Let's keep building a community of minds that don't fit because we were never meant to.